embark on the Great Canadian Farm Tour, it is important to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of Indigenous peoples. Agriculture in the Classroom Canada recognizes and honors the enduring presence of the diverse Indigenous communities across Canada, including the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We acknowledge the deep connection that Indigenous peoples have to the land, waters, resources, and all of agriculture. We express our gratitude for their stewardship and custodianship of these lands for generations. Agriculture in the Classroom Canada recognizes that acknowledging the traditional territories we reside and work on is only a small step towards reconciliation. We ask that we all continue to learn more about the Indigenous peoples in these regions, to consider the history and ongoing colonialism on this land, and to reflect on how each of us can contribute to reconciliation. Hello, bonjour! Welcome everyone to our next stop on Season 5 of the Great Canadian Farm Tour. Bienvenue à tous à notre prochain arrêt de la saison 5 de la Grande Tournée des Fermes Canadiennes. We are so excited to have everyone join us today from across Canada. Nous sommes ravis que vous soyez tous là aujourd'hui, venus de partout au Canada. My name is Mercedes from Agriculture in the Classroom Canada. I'll be your MC for today. Je m'appelle Mercedes d'Agriculture en Classe Canada, and je serai votre maître de cérémonie aujourd'hui. Before we get started, we just wanted to provide a few reminders. For those who want to follow along in French, please use the Boostlingo link provided in the chat to access the interpreting services provided for today. We ask that everyone is mindful this is an educational event, so inappropriate conduct happening in the chat, such as spamming and improper comments, will not be tolerated. Throughout the tour, we will welcome you to post your questions in the chat to get them answered. We will answer as many questions as possible. The mystery word for your student activity books will appear at the end of the episode, so please stick around to see it. Students, fun learning will be happening that can be written in your student activity books, which will be shared during the brain break today. Finally, we'd love to know where everyone is joining us from. Please comment in the chat your school and location. Now, we would like to welcome our next tour host of the Great Canadian Farm Tour, which is Ryan from Tallgrass Prairie Bakery Co. in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I had to run through it all. Welcome, Ryan. It's nice to have you here today, Ryan. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
Yes,
nice to see everybody out there. It's great to be part of this. Well, I say hi to everybody out there right now.
Yeah, it's great to have you with us today, Ryan. We're very appreciative to have you join us. I was wondering, to get us started, if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself for everyone watching from across Canada.
Yeah, well, I'm a baker, so that's my main job. And I've been working at Tallgrass Prairie Bread Company for almost 20 years. So I've been baking for almost 20 years. I started when I was 20 and 41 now. So it's been quite some time. I also do a variety of other things at the bakery. I'm a miller there as well. And I do a lot of teaching, both with my fellow coworkers, teaching training, but also tour groups and students like everyone out there. Yeah.
It's great to hear about your background, and it seems like you do a lot. So we have such great expertise coming with us with Ryan to talk about flour milling and the baking process. So we're excited to get started to learning more about that. And for this tour, we'll be watching a series of videos with Ryan to learn about the flour milling and baking process. And then Ryan's going to go ahead and answer some of the great questions coming from students across Canada. So we will get started with our very first video.
Hi, my name is Ryan Stace, and I'm a baker at Tallgrass Prairie Bread Company. What we do here is make bread, make products, croissants, muffins, all with local flour. And then we bring it to customers all across the city. Right now we're in the Forks Market. People come here from all over Winnipeg and all over the world to see what we do. We love to show what we do too. It's an open bakery. All of our bakeries are open bakeries. So that means that if you walk by, you also can see what's going on. We often get questions on the fly and we have to explain ourselves. So that's what I'm going to try to do for you guys today. I'm giving you the tour. So here we have a map of all of the locations in Manitoba where we get our local ingredients from. You can see it's quite a few and they're wide and varied. Some are easier to get than others. Things like the grain, which comes from Gilbert Plains near Dauphin. that we have on hand all the time. We're committed to sourcing all local and organic grain. We prioritize that because we make mostly bread, and bread is mostly made out of grain. Everything else, like butter, eggs, milk, also are local. The eggs are coming from Nature's Farm. Stony Brook Creamery is where we get our milk from. Notre Dame Creamery is where we get our butter from. All that stuff is possible to get in Manitoba. And I think what we try to do is as much as possible get it as close to home. We find it connects people not only more to the food, but also to the people that are involved in making the food. So in the Forks Market, we have farmers coming through all the time, dropping off local produce. That is also a really important connection because it allows the farmers and the customers to be in the same space with each other. We like to think of the bakery as kind of like a middle point or a connection point between what happens on the farms and for the consumer, and to show people that it is possible to do these things, that it's not too hard, and we think it's worth it. So the process of making bread, it all begins here. We're standing here in the Forks Market, right by our silo and mill. So our silo here contains all the wheat that we'll need for about a quarter of the year. Fill it about 4 times a year, and it contains 700 bushels of wheat. That is almost 25,000 pounds of wheat. So now we're inside the mill room. The grains have made their way into the hopper. We have a whole load of red fife wheat. So red fife is a kind of grain that's a little bit more ancient than the modern varieties. It was produced in the earlier part of the 20th century. We also mill spelt and rye here in our mill. Today we're gonna mill some red fife for you. This is our mill. It's a 40-inch granite stone mill, horizontal, which means that the stones are sitting on top of each other. Inside this thing, there's 2 800-pound stones. So if you can imagine that, 800 pounds is a pretty heavy stone. And the reason that it needs to be that heavy is because the weight of that stone moving around, it's crushing the grain and turning it into flour. First, I'm starting the mill. You can't see it, but inside that top stone is starting to rotate. Takes a few seconds to get fully up to speed. But what we're gonna do now is slowly lower the stone so that they're just almost touching. So let's check out now how our flour is doing. So you can actually see pretty clearly the different parts of the wheat here. The fluffy white stuff is the endosperm. That's actually the food of the plant. So that's what the wheat plant uses to grow. Then you have the bran, that's the outer husk. But you can't see much as the germ because the germ is quite small. It's a very, very small part of the grain.
Wow, that was a great way to get started to learn more about the milling process and your initial steps to create bread. As we're getting ready to pull up our first question from students across Canada, my first question to get us started for you, Ryan, is did you have to do any technical schooling to kind of get you ready for learning about and becoming a baker or milling, or how'd you get started?
I mean, it's possible to do technical schooling in baking, especially from the craft side. So going to baking school is a great way to get into baking. But I personally did not go to school for baking. I actually have a philosophy degree. So if you study philosophy, maybe one day you'll become a baker as well. But I learned everything that I know on the job. So learning from other people who know how to mill, who know how to bake, those from that sort of baker to baker or miller to miller contact from an individual person, you learn what they know. And I try to also do that now for the next generation to show them, teach them what I know, and then starting out new bakers and hopefully starting in the same way. But there's actually lots of different ways to get into baking, and most of it just starts by doing it, either in school or at home or in working in a bakery. So there's lots you can learn on the job as well. Yeah.
I think that's great. When it comes to education, there's always such great avenues where you can land somewhere else that you never really planned for. So I think hearing your story about how you went to get a philosophy degree first and then applied yourself elsewhere is kind of neat. Kind of how you did this roundabout journey to become this amazing baker doing these great things in Winnipeg. So now we'll get started with some questions from students across Canada, and we'll be pulling up our first one right now. How much grain do you have to mill in one day? So this is a question coming from Cutting Cookies.
Okay, so every day we mill about 3 bins of wheat, and spelt and rye as well. About 3 bins. Each bin contains about 120 pounds of flour. So that's about 360 pounds each day. That services not just the location where you saw me at in the Forks, but also at our original location in the Wolseley neighborhood in Winnipeg. And we also have even a new now location in St. Boniface. So that mill at 360 pounds services all 3 locations each day. And the mill is operating 7 days a week. So that's quite a bit of grain. I think it's about 130,000 pounds of flour a year. So that's quite a lot. I mean, we make a lot of bread, so kind of makes sense that we need to have that much. And it's always going up. The more we produce, the more flour we need to mill.
Well, that's fantastic to even look at how much flour you need to do and the fact that your production is going up. So there's definitely jobs in the bread world just for all kids out there who want to learn how to make bread and get into what Ryan's doing. There's the need and desire to eat bread, and bread I personally love. It's probably one of my biggest weaknesses. Maybe others can relate to that. So our next question coming from Stella wants to know, what temperature do you need for bread to rise?
That's an interesting question, actually, because bread can actually rise at many different temperatures. The question is how long you want to wait for your bread to rise. So I think ideal yeast production, so they say, is about I think maybe 30 Celsius. Sometimes we think in Fahrenheit too, so about 100 Fahrenheit. That's like about 35 Celsius, I think. So that's ideal yeast production, which means that the yeast will be growing fastest at that temperature. But they're actually at colder temperatures, the yeast is still active. And there are other elements at work, like acids, which take longer to grow. And those things actually work better at lower temperatures. So in the bakery, we use a variety of temperatures. The key is knowing how long each temperature needs to produce that amount of yeast. So a good rule is if you in about an hour, if a dough doubles at 100 degrees, then that's kind of like an average production for regular bread. But other breads, we're sort of intentionally putting less yeast in and then slowing it down with temperature to be able to bake the next day, for example. So.
Oh, that's a great question coming from Stella. And we're going to do one more question before going into our second video. So this is from Kaylin, who would like to know how many loaves you make and sell in a year, and if you can do the math.
Yeah, I actually did the math before. That's a very, very common question. I do tours of the bakery all the time, and that's pretty much the most popular question. So I did a quick tally. I think at each site, we do about 100 loaves a day. That's kind of an average. So that's about 200 loaves per day across the 3 sites. So I know I said that there's 100 loaves a day, but it's depending on the location. Some are mixed production. So in total, I think per year we have it's close to 70,000 loaves of bread across those 3 locations. So that's 70,000. It's quite a large number. That's we're busy every day. So
that's a great question, and it's great to hear that you're so busy. We're going to move on to our next video to learn more about the bread production with Ryan and the flour milling production. So let's bring up our next video.
We've milled the flour. We're going to show you how we use the flour in the bakery to make bread. This is the whole wheat flour right here. We use a scale because it's a little bit more accurate than cup measurement. Now, if you don't have a scale at home, the cup measurement works fine. We've got salt here, important for binding the bread, but also for flavor. The salt also slows down the fermentation a little bit of the yeast. So as the yeast grows in the bread, it helps it not break apart too much. Some ingredients are unexpected. So this is a vitamin C, and that's something that actually gives the flour a little bit more binding power. So it helps strengthen it and expand, help hold that air and help it grow in the oven. Next, we're gonna add the yeast. So this is fresh yeast. It has to be kept in the refrigerator so it doesn't go bad, but there's also different kinds of yeast, like dry yeast as well, that has a longer lifespan. And that one you can keep at home. Often you have it in your cupboard or in your fridge. So yeast is actually a living organism that uses the flour as food. The byproducts of yeast are carbon dioxide and a little bit of alcohol. And the carbon dioxide for bakers is what we need to help the bread grow. We also have a little bit of sourdough starter. Sourdough starter also contains yeast. It also contains acids. So it gives a very, very unique sour flavor, and it helps the dough rise as well. Some breads are risen entirely with sourdough starter. This bread that we're gonna make today, the Summer Song bread, is a combination of commercial fresh yeast and sourdough starter. This is another sourdough starter. This is spelt sour. And it's just another cousin of wheat that we're gonna show you. So next, we're gonna add a little bit of biga. So biga is actually a pre-fermented dough, and that's a dough that was made the day before, but we added to today's bread. And that also helps strengthen the dough.
And we're back with Ryan for learning a little bit more about your process in measuring different types of yeast and the fact that you have different types of yeast you use and different sourdough starters or different starters you use. So that's actually very interesting. And what I really liked, and if you could tell us a little bit more about it, Ryan, was I saw you're measuring things on a scale as you're going. How important is the measuring process as you're combining all these ingredients?
In terms of the measuring process, I think it really depends on what ingredient you were talking about and how that indicates how important it is for the measurement. There are certain ingredients where you really need to be accurate. So something like salt, if you do a different salt amount than is usually in the bread, then you're not only going to get different results, but the flavor will be very different. People will notice if it's too salty or not salty enough. For other ingredients, maybe like the quantity of overall flour, you can go up or down a little bit depending on it. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate. But for us, accuracy is tied to a recipe. So if we're looking for a specific amount of bread that we're trying to make, then getting the ingredients right will match the amount of bread we're using. So that's why we use scales. It helps consistency as well. It helps consistency amongst bakers. So different bakers with different training levels are able to use the same recipe to produce the same results. And that has a lot to do with measurement. So I think accuracy in bread baking is important, but I think it's also not. It's good to not get too hung up on exactly how accurate. That's why I think I say cup measurements are okay. If you're baking from home, for example, you don't want to be put off by not having a scale or not having the right equipment. I think you can make bread under lots of different circumstances, especially at home, and you want to be able to experiment a little bit. So the key is knowing what each ingredient does in the bread and how it affects the bread. Once you understand that, then you're able to play around a little bit and understand. But starting from accurate measurements is always the great first step.
Well, thank you for explaining that. And for students who like math, or maybe math with a little bit of forgiveness, maybe baking could be for them.
That's a good way of putting it. I think math with a little bit of forgiveness, it describes a lot of what we do. So, yeah.
That's great. So let's pull up some questions from students across Canada. From Micah, wonders if you have special ovens to bake your bread in. So that's a great question.
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, we have a few ovens that are available at different bakeries. Actually, we have different ovens at each site, so that complicates things a little bit in terms of bakers that work at each site. But the ovens are specialized for the commercial baking. It generally means that they have a higher capacity. We're able to bake many, 40, 50 loaves of bread at one time, as opposed to your home oven, which is 4 or 5. But we also have different types of ovens for specific kinds of bread. So at one of our locations, or two of our locations, we have a deck oven, which is the bread goes directly onto the stone. There's a kind of a hot stone that sits in the oven, and the bread is baked right on the stone, which allows it to open in a bit of a different or better way than a convection oven, which is an oven powered by a fan. So convection ovens are really great for other products like croissants because they bake more evenly. But the deck oven is with the steam injection is the only thing that really makes sourdough breads, baguettes, really crusty breads. Those are more specialized for deck ovens, and that you have the steam injection, which also allows the bread to open in a different way. That's hard. It's harder to do at home. Yeah.
That was a fantastic question. Just learning about the types of different ovens out there.
Yeah.
Someone had to go and make all those different types of ovens and think about how they could be used with the process of making bread. So anybody who's interested in technology, that's a great thing to get into, learning how to make different types of ovens. So let's bring up another question from students. So Miss Cummings, 3-4 split class, wonders how many different things you bake besides bread.
Wow, we wouldn't have time to list them all. We would be here for another hour or so. I think we make a lot of different products, everything from muffins, croissants. There's buns. We make granola. We make there's squares. So little squares, sweet squares. We make cookies. We also have a lot of holiday baking, so things that only appear at the holidays. So right now, around getting the lead up to Christmas, we've started the traditional items like fruitcake. We also make vinatorta, which is a kind of a traditional Icelandic cake with different layers of cookies, prune filling in between. We make cakes as well. We do loaves too, sort of specialty nut loaves. The list goes on and on. We also have an entire other section of our bakery which does kitchen products. So they're making soups and meals like that, and the bakers, then make products to complement that. So scones, bannock, little kind of biscuits that go along that, focaccia. There's a whole list. I just throwing those things off the top of my head of things that I make on a regular basis. But there are also there's if you want to learn new products every day, a bakery is where you want to be. We always have new things going on. So.
That is so great. So it kind of shows the diversity of your day-to-day and how there's always creative opportunities to do something new. So that's really good for students interested in creative new things and changing things every few days or seasonally. I know I'd be very much tempted to eat all the things that you're baking. That must be hard to navigate. And now we have another question, and our final question before commercial break, coming in from Art. And Art is wondering, what is your favorite product you make in the bakery?
Well, a favorite product to eat or a favorite product to bake? I could do both, but my favorite product to eat is a cheese croissant. I think for me, I probably eat a cheese croissant every day. So that to me is a perfect combination of flavor and layers in one package. You don't need to put anything on it. It's like a sandwich that already is baked that way. In terms of my favorite product to bake, I think it probably is baguettes or sourdough bread. For me, those products have very, very simple ingredients. So a baguette is really just flour, water, and salt, and some yeast. But the process is subtle and kind of complex to get right. So I like those products that involve simple ingredients that rely on a specific method or tradition that you use to make into the final product. And I find them just the most interesting to make. Yeah.
What a great question. Now we'll head into our commercial break and then be back with Ryan to watch our next couple of videos and get more questions answered from students across Canada. So we'll see you all soon. Now we're back with Ryan and we're going to jump straight into our third video. So we'll see you all soon.
The ingredient in bread is water. So it seems simple, but that actually turns the flour combined into bread. So as we mix it, the higher amounts of water will help the bread expand and actually grow into the final form. Now we start the mixer. The water content has to be just right, not too little and not too much. An interesting thing about flour is that actually at different times of the year it absorbs water in different ways. So if the flour is a little bit older, then it actually drinks more water. For that reason, we have to judge the amount of water we're adding every time a little bit differently. So the mixing process is really important. When the mixer is kneading the dough, the purpose of kneading a dough is to strengthen all of the gluten chains within the flour. So flour naturally contains lots of gluten, and it needs to be kneaded to activate that gluten. The stronger it gets, the more aligned those gluten chains become. It starts off all jagged and then slowly gets more uniform. And that creates our dough structure, which is kind of like a balloon. You know, you fill a balloon with air, so that's kind of similar to the way that the bread rises. As the gluten forms, it creates the outside edge of that balloon, and then when the yeast creates the carbon dioxide, it fills that structure with air, making the final dough form. So one way to check if the dough's ready is to grab a little piece and see if there's what we call a gluten window. So you roll the dough between your hands and gently stretch it out. The idea is to see if you can create like a window pane to see through. It's actually not ready at all. It's very chunky. It's not elastic in any way. There's no window pane going on, so it needs to mix a little bit longer. So the bread we're making today, it's called Summer Song bread, and the reason that it's called that is because we're including lots of fresh local herbs in here. Here we have some garlic. I think dill is a classic Manitoba ingredient. It's pretty much everywhere. It's used a lot in canning and as a flavoring, but I think some people find it a bit strong, but I think that's why bread is kind of the perfect vehicle for dill. You need a lot of extra herbs to flavor a bread. That's why we're using strong ingredients like garlic, onions, dill. Afterwards, in every slice, there'll be a little bit of that strong flavors. We like to feature different local ingredients as they come in season because it also gives people an idea of what's happening on the farm, what's happening in the country, and we can make a connection between what we're doing and where the food comes from. So I'm gonna fry up a little bit of onions and garlic just to bring out the flavor. I was talking a little bit about intense flavors, and so These help make those roasted flavors just a little bit more noticeable in the bread. The garlic sometimes comes along a little bit too strong, so we're just going to roast it to caramelize those flavors a little bit. So now that the dough's been mixing for a little bit, it's been about 6 or 7 minutes in this big mixer, I think it's pretty much good. I can see that it's getting stronger. The gluten strands are aligning more. It's becoming smoother overall. So we're gonna check for that gluten window again. All right, it's looking pretty good. Getting elastic. You can see the light through it, the translucent, right, aspect of what happens with this dough. That's how you know that the gluten is ready to go move on to the next stage. We're gonna add the herbs now. So now we're gonna let the dough rise. It takes about an hour, and with that, the purpose of the first fermentation stage is for the yeast to really catch on to those starches that are inside the flour. And so we're gonna let that happen now. Good bread takes time.
That was so fantastic to see how you add herbs into your breads. So for timing, we're just going to jump straight into some questions from students across Canada. And this is coming in from Miss Deanna's grade 3 Brandon, Manitoba class. When they bake at home, it is different at different times of the year. Is it different in the bakery too, for winter to summer, for rising and baking?
Wow, these questions are really cool. I have to say, this kind of question, this kind of stuff is something that we talk about all the time in the bakery. So indeed, there are different techniques that we use at different seasons. So for some recipes, for example, we have different seasonal recipes. In other words, when it's colder, you're going to need a little bit more heat or a little bit more yeast to help that bread grow if the temperatures are colder outside. In the summer, the ambient temperature is a little bit warmer, so you're going to need a little bit less yeast, and the dough needs to be maybe not quite as warm all the time to grow, because the ambient temperature that's surrounding in the bakery is gonna help do that for you. So I think baking in this context, it's all about being able to understand your environment, understand the variables that work in yeast production, so temperature, time, yeast quantity, and to be able to kind of adjust those seasonally to compensate for the things that you can't control, like the weather. Yeah.
And I think that's a great experiment for some of our classes to do across Canada, is to run a control experiment where you have a certain set of amount of yeast and temperature put into one batch and then something else for another batch, and see how they both come out different. Yeah. So I think that's a great experiment that we're going to challenge everybody across Canada to do. And now we'll do one more question before going into our last video. So from Emma, why did you choose to work at the bakery?
Yeah, I think for me, why I chose to work at the bakery is different than the reason why I chose to keep working at the bakery. So at the beginning, for me, it was really just a job. I had finished school, or I was in school finishing my degree, and I needed some money. I kind of wanted to move out of my parents' house, so I needed a job. But I think the reason why I kept working at the bakery, why I chose to become a kind of a career baker, was that there's always something new to learn, and that I was able to kind of bring in my other interests in terms of curiosity about nature, about ingredients, about science, and about people as well. There's lots of different people that work in the bakery, both from the counter side, from the production side, but also from the farming side. So getting to know farmers and the community of network of people that we have surrounding our suppliers and the people that support the bakeries. So that was really important to us as well, or to me as well, when I started, and that has kept going. There's always something new to learn. As well, now as I get further in, I'm involved in leadership in the bakery, and that is another interesting part, which is kind of kept me going. The ability to teach and to lead people within the bakery setting always provides new opportunities grow and to keep going, as well as doing things like this to be here with you. It's interesting to me to talk to people about bread, and I get to do that every day. So
that's so interesting, so that sometimes you never know where a path will take you and how you develop new passions for things that you're doing. So let's jump into our final video with everyone, and then we'll do a couple questions after that. So let's kick it away.
So now we can see the dough's filled with air and ready to cut. It's been sitting for about an hour in a nice warm place. Temperature really increases the yeast production and helps it grow. Now that the first fermentation is done, what we're going to do is cut it and shape it into the final shape of loaves. We're going to weigh out each piece on our balance scale so that all the breads are equal size. So shaping is probably the most important part of the final form of the bread. It's where your last chance to make the dough a little bit more like that balloon we were talking about earlier. So as I fold the bread into itself, you can see the rounded edges forming the balloon. When you shape bread, you start to really understand the properties of how gluten changes when you mix it and touch it. So you can see that it's getting stronger also by folding up into itself. And if you use the table for a bit of friction to tighten that loaf, you can see that that tight edge is gonna then fill with air as the yeast grows and rises. For anyone that's interested in chemistry and physics, bread making is for you, because you can learn a lot about how states of matter interact as you're shaping bread. Here, all we've done is combine flour and water with a little bit of other helpful ingredients, yeast and salt. And those things have now become a completely different form than they were in their original ingredients. So now that we shaped all the bread, it's going to go on its final rise. That's called the proof. So the idea of the proof is that the bread is proving to you a little bit of what it's worth, about how much it's going to rise. So we're doing that in a warm space, and then after that, when it's fully risen, we're going to bake it. So you can see there's a lot of different people involved in the bakery. You know, it's a whole connected system of people working together to do what we do. I also really like connecting with people, and there's so many different people involved in a bakery. We rely on delivery drivers, we rely on farmers, on salespeople. We also rely on things like media, you know, to help push people and bring those people towards what we do, to show people what we do. We also rely on educators, on students, on people that are just getting into the industry who are looking for some experience. So I really like the idea of everyone working together and sharing that information, and that also inspires me then to share the information that I know to other people. And that's I think a big part of the job for me. So once the bread's finished baking, we take it out of the oven, and now we've arrived at our final product, Summer Song bread. So it's nice and crusty. We can feel that that it has enough air. The volume is nice and light for its size. And we're going to cut into it. Nothing like cutting into fresh bread. You can see through all the kneading and time that we've given it. It has beautiful air pockets in there. Chunks of dill and garlic. It's one of my favorite breads for sure. If there's one thing bakers like, it's eating bread. So now you've seen the whole process, from milling to mixing to shaping and finally to baking. We've arrived at our final loaf of bread. And let me tell you, it does taste delicious. Bakers love to eat bread. Thanks for coming on this tour with me today, guys. I really have enjoyed showing you everything that we've been doing here in the bakery that we do every day. And if you're ever in the Forks Market, come say hi.
Wow, it's just amazing to see that final product come to life. And so we can wrap up this tour. We're going to do a couple more questions with students from across Canada and get some final comments from Ryan. So this question coming in, do you make gluten-free, coming from Oliver?
Yeah, it's a question we get a lot. We actually don't make a lot. There's nothing that we can make in our bakery that's officially called gluten-free, and that's because of the milling. There's so much flour in the air and around in all the products that we use, that people with celiac disease won't be able to necessarily eat that. Even if we make something that doesn't have the wheat in it, like we do, we offer some products which we call gluten friendly, you know, for people who are maybe less sensitive to gluten than celiac. But I think for us, if people coming who really want that, they know where to get it. And also for us, we at least are able to show that we're able to make products without wheat flour. So it's a bit complicated. I think that it's an increasingly more question that we get. So we might have to open like a separate bakery that just does gluten-free at one point. I mean, who knows? But for now, we try our best with the products, with the grains that naturally don't contain gluten. So things like rice flour and corn flour, we do some products with that. And for some customers that it satisfies their gluten-free needs. Then for others, they'll have to go for a more specialized product.
Well, that's a great question. Just as there's always different dietary needs, and so you do offer some products, but it's also hard to do everything for everyone. So
Certainly.
I appreciate that question. And we're going to do one more question from students across Canada, and then we'll go into final words with Ryan. Do you ship your products to other locations in Canada? This is coming from Amber.
We do get requests on that from time to time. We have done on a very small scale individual orders. So sometimes we've mailed products to other places, but unfortunately we don't sell officially products in other provinces. Like it's not going to be on the store shelves or in other or in grocery stores or anything. You're not going to see our products there because it is what we do is really tied to our fresh produced and in-house baking. But that said, there have been some occasions where some more longer lasting items, things like cake, I think I mentioned the Vina Torta, I think we shipped one to Vancouver one time, I'm not sure. But there have been, it's more on a special request basis than anything else. I mean, we're always willing to consider what that looks like for some people who really want those products, the specific products that we make. We have made some exceptions, but we generally don't do it at a time. Yeah.
That's a great question. Although if you are in the Winnipeg area, we encourage you to come out to visit Tallgrass Prairie Bread Co. So I have to work on saying it all in one mouthful. Sorry. And then as we're wrapping up, we wanted to see if there's any final words shared by Ryan, including any shout outs to any schools that you'd like to do, Ryan.
Yeah, I guess I've really enjoyed chatting with you guys today, or being here today to explain the process. Something I always, as I said before, talking about bread is something that I really like to do. I guess I could give a shout out to my local school, Laura Secord School, which is the elementary school that I went to, and is also very, very close to our original bakery location in the Wolseley neighborhood in Winnipeg. And I grew up here, and I'll also still live here. So that's an important school to me. So shout out Laura Secord. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Ryan, is there anything heartfelt you want to share with students across Canada about inspirational around getting into bakery production, becoming into the milling lifestyle?
Yeah, I think let your curiosity guide you. I think that's what I would say. If you're curious about products, especially about the science and the technical aspects of how bread is worked, but also about how bakers work, the kind of skills that they use and food skills that they use to teach each other with, I think that you will never be disappointed if you let your curiosity guide you. It hasn't failed me yet in terms of that. Always new things to learn. So I think that really that is really something that I would say, let your passion be the thing that you use to choose where you want to spend your time. You're going to be at work quite a bit in your life, and you should be doing at least letting your interest and passion for that guide the thing that you're going to be spending a lot of time in. It pays off.
I think that's wonderful. So everybody, take some time, learn about baking bread. Maybe that's going to be the passion that guides you for your future. I hope all of you learned something new today. I know I did. And before we close off this episode, and thank you everyone for waiting patiently, I'm excited to share the mystery word for today is toppings, which goes into your mystery word number 9 slot, or reste en français. So this is actually really good because we've been talking about so many different ingredients you include in bread. And thank you again to Ryan for joining us on this episode of the Great Canadian Farm Tour. Our next stop will be on December 10th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time at a mushroom farm in British Columbia. So that'll be kind of a fun thing we're going to on next. Thank you to Ryan and thank you to everyone. We look forward to seeing you soon. So goodbye for now and à bientôt.
Thanks.